Hi. Back in 2009, Gibson manufactured 1,000 of these. This is their third generation robot guitar. It's called a Les Paul Dusk Tiger. At the time, the reviews were a little bit on the mixed side. Most of the negative comments were about the look of the instrument. And I must confess that the first time I laid eyes on one of these, my first thought was, that's a very odd looking Les Paul. Others lamented its price, and I must confess I got an awesome deal when I bought mine. I remember reading quite a lot of the comments on Gibson's website that was devoted to the Dusk Tiger that had been left by people berating Gibson for playing with the design of such an iconic instrument as the Les Paul. Most of these naysayers, I'm sure, had never even played one of these, and they were obviously ignorant of the fact that Les Paul himself used to play with his electronics in his guitar quite frequently, trying to expand its capabilities. So unlike most Les Pauls, let's talk about the manufacture or the structure of the instrument first. Unlike most Les Pauls that have a maple cap that's carved, this is actually a flat top. And the timber is not maple at all, certainly you can tell that. The two straight stripes here are ebony, which is also what the fretboard is made of. But the other timber is called, and says he while he's looking it up, it's called marble wood. I guess for fairly obvious reasons it's kind of marbled. I think it looks fairly reasonable. The bit that most people comment negatively about is this piece of chrome here. I just wonder though whether that serves a purpose other than making the instrument look a bit ugly. Perhaps shielding the internal electronics, and there's some fairly snazzy things happening under the hood, I can tell you now. I'll explain those a little bit. The pickups, when the guitar is off, the fancy stuff, the pickups behave like P90s. The electronics itself is driven by a battery, camera style battery that slots in the back here. As you might be able to see, the back of the instrument has like subtle tiger striping, and of course we have the tiger teeth indicating the 5th and the 12th frets. The machine heads are their third generation of mechanised machine heads, and I'll tell you a little bit about those in a minute. And on the top of the machine heads there are little grub screws. So what you do when you restring the instrument, after taking the original strings off, you pull the new string sort of fairly firm, and then do up the grub screw to hold it in place, and then you need to actually cut off the excess as close as you can to the pole of the machine head. And I'll tell you why. The reason is, when the machine tunes itself, it actually sends the power for each machine head down the strings. So if any of the strings touch adjacent strings, it actually shorts the system out and it stops it from tuning. It doesn't actually damage the instrument, it just means that it won't actually continue doing the tuning job. And that's, I guess, the first thing that we come to with respect to the fancy stuff of this particular guitar. But just before I talk about that, let's talk about the controls first. This is the volume for the neck pickup, the volume for the bridge pickup. This is called the MCK, otherwise known as the master control knob. That's where all the magic happens. I'll show you that in a minute. And this is the overall tone. You have a 3-position, the usual, well, it's actually not so usual, but I'll explain in a minute. 3-position switch for the magnetic pickups. So neck, bridge, and both together as usual. But this is also a potentiometer. When you turn this, it brings in the volume of the piezo pickup, which is in the bridge. It's actually a split piezo pickup, so that each string has its own pickup. The body itself, I've explained the top part, the woods of that, the back and the neck are both mahogany, and the body is actually weight relieved or routed out quite a lot. You can possibly hear it's actually quite hollow around here, not so there, solid there. So that tends to give the instrument a bit of slight of a semi-acoustic kind of sound, and a little bit more noise when you play it unplugged. Okay, what about the output options? There are a few. So you can see probably this is a combination output jack. You can plug a normal 1/4 inch phono into there, but you can also plug in a male 3-pin XLR connector, and that gives you a low impedance output, which you have to turn on with this little switch here, and there's a little green light that lights up when it's in the low impedance output. And when it's in the low impedance output, the phono plug is defeated. So if you're playing this guitar or pick it up, start playing it, and you're not getting any signal out on your normal guitar lead, then that's the first thing to check. Make sure that that switch isn't turned on, because it will mute the output on the phono plug. This instrument also comes with its own little computer interface, which you can use apart from the computer as well. Let's just quickly talk about this little interface. It's called the RIP, Robot Interface Pack. Some might say rest in peace, because the company that makes them, which was Echo, no longer actually manufactures such things, so they don't support them. However, when you plug this into a computer via a firewire cable, and it also needs a little DC supply, you can, when this is connected to the guitar using a tip ring sleeve connector at either end, you can actually record the magnetic pickup separately and the combined output of the piezo pickup that's in the bridge separately, as well as every individual string separately on individual tracks if you wish. I have actually used that technique to create a stereo 12-string guitar out of this particular instrument by recording each string separately and selecting the lower 4 strings and copying them, then transposing those copies up an octave and delaying them slightly, and then just inserting a chorus delay on the top 2 strings. And then I got really carried away and panned every string to a different place, so it really was a stereo guitar. Not sure whether the people listening to the recording actually got that, but anyhow, it was fun doing that. On the back here of the RIP, you'll also see a mini 8-pin DIN plug. Now, this guitar came with an 8-pin to 14-pin cable, so you can use this instrument to drive one of the Roland guitar synthesizers if you wish. Inside, under the bonnet here, there are 2 4-band fully programmable parametric equalizers. One of them is for the magnetic pickups and the other one is for the piezo pickup. And when you first turn the instrument on, there are four different banks. There's the blue bank, the green bank, the yellow bank, and the red bank. Now, in fact, in the yellow bank, there are, how many is it? 11, yes. No, 8. That's right. There are, when you turn the electronics on by lifting the MCK, the first bank it goes to is the blue bank. You might be able to see there's a blue S in the middle of the knob there now. S stands for standard tuning. So if you're like me and mostly just play standard tuning, all you do is put it in S, strum the strings, and if you look closely, although it was fairly in tune before, the machine heads will move, and the lights around the outside of the MCK for each string change from red when it's out of tune to flashing yellow while it's actually tuning to green when it's in tune. Now the factory preset or default setting is to mute the output when it's tuning, but you can actually change that with the computer software that comes with the instrument. When the guitar is plugged in through the RIP to the computer, you can use Gibson's Chameleon software to do all kinds of things with the setup of this instrument. I'll talk a bit about those in a minute. So after it's tuned, the guitar then goes into whatever state you had it in last. Now I tend to just use the preset, factory preset sounds, and they're in the green bank. So if you forget what each of them are and what each of the tunings are, they're actually on the back of this little cover for the battery. But I'll talk you through what the various ones are. The first, number one, is a Gibson Les Paul 1958 with the neck position, so you have to have it in the neck position. Number two is a 1955 Les Paul in the neck position. Number three is a 1955 Les Paul in the neck position or the neck and bridge positions. Number four is a heavy Les Paul rhythm setup. Number five is one that I tend to use quite a lot. That's an ES335 in either the neck or the neck and bridge pickup. Number six is called Funky Neck in the in the manual that comes with the instrument. It refers to it as stratified neck. That might give you a bit of a clue as to what it's meant to sound like. Number seven is Funky Bridge or Stratified Bridge, if you like. Then number eight is Twang Neck, obviously televised, if you like. Also in the neck position. And number nine is Twang Neck Sharp. Twang Neck Silver Sharp. I think that's referring to a specific style of pickup on the Telecaster. And then the 10th position is marked as A for acoustic. And when you have it in A for acoustic, you're meant to blend in about 30% of the piezo. Now through this particular guitar amp, because it's really an electric amp rather than one for an acoustic, it doesn't sound as much like an acoustic as it does when you plug it into the computer interface, but trust me, it does sound like a fairly good acoustic. And the last position on the MCK in the green bank is the battery indicator. So there we have it. That's in the green bank. To select the different banks, you just depress it without stopping. If you press it fairly quickly, it'll cycle through the various banks. So starting with the blue bank, goes green, back to blue, then yellow, then red, then back to green. So the yellow bank is where you can store user setups for the guitar. The user setup includes both tuning, how you want it tuned, and also the settings for the pickups, because the pickups can be either humbucking or single coil, in series or in parallel, in phase or out of phase, as well as you have control over the EQ, parametric equalizers that are inside as well. So you can do all of those things and store it as a user function or user memory. You can have 88 of your own setups inside the guitar at any one time, plus the 10 that it comes with. So 98 different setups inside the guitar at any one time. Let's go back to the blue bank and I'll talk you through the various tuning options that it comes with, the factory presets. So S, obviously standard tuning. The next one is an I, don't ask me why, but that's what it is. and that's for drop D. C is the next one, that's for double drop D. Once again, who knows why. E is open E major, now we're getting something a bit more logical. A is open A major, D is open D major, G is open G major, B is all the strings down a semitone. That's handy if you're playing an E flat. Lowercase e is open E minor. Arrow is all the strings down one tone, so two semitones from standard tuning. And then the circle is dad-gad, so D-A-D, G-A-D. So just to give you a bit of a demonstration as to how this works, I've selected all the strings down a semitone. So if you just watch the... And as usual, the G string is the last one to be in tune. There we have it, now it's in tune. So that... except it's down the semitone. Let me go back to standard tuning, shall we? So we're back in standard tuning again, and it only took a few seconds. So that's how the tuning works. Okay, about the only other thing I think that I haven't spoken about is the red bank. Now the red bank has all the configuring options for the Dusk Tiger, like intonating the guitar, doing advanced tuning functions and changing the strings and more. So you can change the reference pitch if you're playing with an orchestra that isn't tuned to A440. A lot of the European ones like to tune a bit up from that to make themselves sound a bit brighter. So if you're playing along with one of those with this particular instrument, you can select the pitch of whatever it is that you're going to tune to, and then select tune all the other strings relative to that. It's also the easiest system for setting the intonation on your guitar. You put that into the intonation mode and play one string at a time, and it very accurately, then more so than usual, tunes the guitar, tunes that one string, and the light for that string on the MCK will change from red to blue. When it's blue, then you play the 12th fret, just gently fretting that string on the 12th fret. And if it's in tune, it'll change the colour of that light to green. If it's not in tune, then the lights around the outside that indicate these various strings will spin in the direction that you need to turn the screw on the bridge. And there's a number that comes up in the middle of the MCK that indicates how far you may need to turn it. I'm not sure exactly how that number works, but certainly the spinning dial is very handy, and it's definitely the easiest way to intonate your guitar. When it comes to changing the strings, there's a function for quickly loosening all the strings, and it basically does them in pairs. It very quickly loosens all the strings. And then there's also another function for, once you've actually put the strings back on, quickly getting them back up to pitch. So now I've got this in position 1 in the green bank, which is the preset sound for a 1958 Les Paul. Does it sound like one? Let's find out. Here's one I prepared earlier. This is a lot louder than the Dusk Tiger. Position 6 is funky neck or stratified neck. Does it sound like a strat? What about the acoustic sound? Well, I've turned the bass and the middle down a little bit on this amplifier because it's not an acoustic amp. About the only other thing I haven't shown you is the case that it came in, which is very subtle, as you can see. There's also a little plaque on the side that says Dusk Tiger. Not sure if you'll be able to see that. And the fur inside, well, tiger fur. And black velvet on the bottom. So, what's the final verdict? Does the Dusk Tiger really sound like a 1958 Les Paul or a Fender Strat? I think the acoustic comparison was a little unfair, being a Super Jumbo, and maybe with a bit of playing around with the EQ that could have been a bit more similar. To me, the Dusk Tiger sounds a lot brighter and a little bit more acoustic than the two solid body guitars, and they certainly are solid body, whereas the Dusk Tiger, as I showed you earlier on, is almost a semi-acoustic in some respects. So that probably has some bearing on how bright the sound is. And the different timbers, of course, always make a difference. The fact that the Dusk Tiger has an ebony fretboard, whereas the 58 Les Paul has rosewood, that will tend to make the Dusk Tiger a bit brighter. But overall, I think it's still a great guitar, easy to play. I love the fact that it tunes itself very quickly. And yeah, my favourite setting is probably the ES335, which I haven't really demonstrated. But I have the 335 that I have is a 12 string, so comparing that with the Dusk Tiger in the 335 setting, I don't think would be a very fair comparison either. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. See you next time.